Yo, what's good everyone? Today I'm going to be taking a first look here at this Week 11 NFL DraftKings main slate. Let's dive right into it. And like I always do here in these videos, I'm going to go position by position, highlighting the plays that are sticking out to me early in the week, and then we'll wrap up this video by putting together a first look cash lineup and a first look tournament lineup. With that being said, let's dive into the quarterbacks here. I got 6 that are sticking out to me here on a Tuesday morning. Look, at the top here we got Lamar Jackson, who's been playing terrific football all year long. If you wanted to go this route, I don't mind it. I think his floor game so far this year has been 17 DraftKings points back in week 2, and we know the ceiling that he provides, but notoriously speaking, he has not played great against the Pittsburgh Steelers, and he has to go into Pittsburgh into this matchup. So I can't say that I'll be spending up for $8,000 in Lamar Jackson this week, but I do like Brock Purdy here at $6,600. Such a safe floor with this guy. He's got weapons galore, and I do like the matchup here against the Seahawks. You can see back in week 6, 24 DraftKings points if I move my head. And now they got Christian McCaffrey back, so that just opens up this offense even more. I think Purdy's going to be cash game viable as well as tournament viable. Another tournament quarterback that I like here this week, or that's sticking out to me early, is Jared Goff. That Jaguars secondary is one of the worst in the NFL. I know Minnesota didn't do anything against them last week, but this offense for the Lions is a different monster, so I do think Goff's going to be a solid tournament play. And then Bo Nix here. Honestly, I think we're going to be talking about him in cash, but I like him in tournaments as well. $6,200. This kid has truly played well this year. 10 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. Not a great ratio there, but I do like how he uses his legs from time to time, brings some decent rushing upside, and I do like that matchup against Atlanta at home. Scrolling down a little bit off of that, I like Tua here as well at home against the Raiders. Think this is going to be a solid tournament play here. Can't probably trust him in cash, even though he is very affordable at $6,000, and it is a really good matchup at home. But again, I do think he's going to be tournament viable at that price, and we know the stacking pieces we can pair him with. Scrolling down a little bit off of that, the next guy that I wanted to highlight was Russell Wilson. Now, the secondary for the Baltimore Ravens is not great, and Russ has looked pretty damn good in black and gold. Nice stacking piece there with George Pickens. That's kind of the one-to-one relationship that I like. We don't need to get too crazy and do double stacks with Russ, but I do think he's going to be in play there at $5,900. And then one more guy that I wanted to highlight here, especially in tournaments, is going to be Jameis Winston at $5,500. Going back against his former team in the New Orleans Saints, I like the stacking pieces with Tillman and Judy. You could even mix in Njoku as well at the tight end position. Very affordable stacking pieces there. And let's actually build a tournament lineup at the end of this video around Jameis and those stacking pieces. Now, moving on to the running backs here, and honestly, I'm looking at this price of $7K and above and saying, okay, there's probably a case to be made to roster any one of those guys. I mean, look at the names that we're talking about here. At $7K, you got Kenneth Walker all the way to the top with Christian McCaffrey at $8,300. Now, I have some guys that are sticking out to me within this range here, but again, probably a case to be made to play any one of those guys in tournaments, and we'll mix them in towards the end with this cash and tournament lineup that we build. But the 3 guys that are sticking out to me at the top here are Christian McCaffrey at home against Seattle. He's going to get more work going forward, but was still heavily involved last week in his first game back. 20 total opportunities, 13 rushing attempts, 7 targets. This is a good spot for him against that Seattle defense. Bijan Robinson sticks out to me here. He has been a volume monster as of late. You can see the rushing attempts have been there, heavily involved in the passing game too. And if there's one area that Broncos defense is a bit susceptible, it is through the running game. And then Devon Achane here at home against Las Vegas. He's now seen at least 5+ targets in every single game with Tua under center, and he's just one of those guys that has such a massive ceiling. I mean, look at the games that he's played here with Tua under center. He's got 23, 29 DraftKings points, and then going back to when Tua came back just a few weeks ago, 26, 32, and 10 last night. So again, he brings that massive ceiling, and in this matchup against Las Vegas, I think he's going to bring us a safe floor too. Now, scrolling down here into the 6K range, again, love this 7K range and above, but Kareem Hunt, I want to highlight highlight him. Now, I haven't talked about him a bunch so far this year, especially when it comes to cash games, and people might be asking why. It's largely due to his lack of involvement in the passing game that's so big on DraftKings with the PPR scoring. But then go back to last week, and this guy saw 10 targets against the Broncos. Now, that number's not going to be sustainable. I don't expect that week in and week out, but if he can get anywhere from 3 to 5 targets per game, I like him significantly more. Now, I do love this matchup as well against Buffalo. That run defense for the Bills has not been great this year, so at $6,700, he's for sure tournament viable, and I think we're going to be talking about him in cash games this week as well. And then the last running back that I wanted to highlight here early on this week was Ramondre Stevenson. Now, the numbers haven't been super consistent this year, but I do like the rushing attempts of 20 and 20 in 2 of his last 3 games, and his involvement in the passing game is usually there more weeks than not. This matchup at home against the Rams, I don't mind that either at $6,100, so more of a tournament play here initially, but I think maybe he's cash game viable as well. Next, we got the wide receivers here, and I'm looking at a dozen on my first look note, so I'm not going to go through each of those individually, but I'll just name drop some of these guys that I do like. Starting at the top here, I think Amon-Ra St. Brown's the top tier play this week in my opinion. Great matchup against the Jacksonville Jaguars at home. I think this is a game where we could see Detroit score 30 plus points. I haven't even looked at their implied total, but my guess is it's above 28.5 points right now, so he's cash game and tournament viable. Tyreek Hill. He's not been the same Tyreek Hill this year, but he's still super explosive. Still the speedster that we know, the cheetah himself. $7,400. Probably can't go there in cash considering his lack of volume week in and week out this season, but he's for sure going to be tournament viable here in this matchup against the Raiders. I think Garrett Wilson's a solid play here as well. He's going to be cash game viable. I like George Pickens in tournaments. Talked about him, stacking him up with Russ in this matchup against Baltimore. But let's scroll down here into this 6K range a little bit and talk about some cash game plays that are sticking out to me, and that's going to be Josh Downs. Now, I know this matchup against the Jets does not look great, but in every single game that Flacco has started at quarterback for the Colts this year, Downs has now seen at least 9 plus targets, and I believe Flacco's starting again here this week against the New York Jets, so we'll obviously keep an eye on that as the week progresses, but assuming it is Flacco getting the green light again, I do think Downs is going to be cash game viable. Now, just a little bit off of that, Calvin Ridley here's an interesting play. Initially, I was thinking, okay, this is a tournament-only play against Minnesota, but I'm looking at the volume here in his last 5 games, 8, 9, 15, 8, and 9 targets. That's what we're looking for in our cash game lineup. So we'll be talking about him as the week progresses too, but at $6,200, and especially looking at his last 3 games here, I do think he's an interesting play. Now, dipping into the 5K range here, I got some other value plays. This is kind of where the value is sticking out to me for the wide receiver position initially. First is going to be Courtland Sutton here at $5,900. We look at his last 3 games, 11, 10, and 9 targets, 21, 26, and 19 DraftKings points. That's hitting at or above 3x value in all 3 of those games. He's definitely going to be cash game viable. I also think that DeAndre Hopkins is worth looking at again this week. Tough matchup last week against Pat Surtain and that Denver Broncos defense, but still had 5 targets, 56 yards, and I just think he's going to get an increased role in this offense going forward for the Chiefs. And that matchup against Buffalo is definitely interesting. Like I said, I like Kareem Hunt, but D-Hop at $5,700 did stick out to me. Scrolling down a little bit off of that, we're going to talk about these Cleveland wide receivers here. We got both Jeudy and Tillman. Now, I lean towards Tillman in cash, but I was looking at the volume here for Jeudy as of late, and he has seen 8 and 11 targets in his last 2 games with Jameis Winston under center. So, again, more of a tournament option in my opinion, but $5,400 is a nice price. Plus, Marshawn Lattimore just got traded out of New Orleans. That secondary is not great for the Saints right now. But again, I do lean towards Tillman here in cash, and obviously think he's a fine tournament play too. But 12, 9, and 11 targets in his last 3 games, 3 touchdowns during that stretch. He has truly looked good, especially with Jameis under center for the Cleveland Browns. And then I just got 2 more guys that I wanted to highlight here, getting down into the 4K range. If Michael Pittman misses again this week, I think Mitchell's going to be an interesting play. Saw 6 targets with Joe Flacco last week. Kind of a value play here at $4,400. And then Mike Williams of the Steelers, $4,100. Only had 1 target and 1 catch, but a big touchdown against Washington last week. And I just think that his role is only going to increase in the Steelers offense going forward. But purely a tournament play, even though he is very affordable. Next, we got the tight end position here, and again, this is a week where I think we could spend up at the tight end position, especially in our tournament lineups. Travis Kelce, week in and week out as of late, has been a volume monster. Double-digit targets now in 4 of his last 5 games. I mean, 12, 16, and 12 in his last 3. Really hard to ignore that. Like I mentioned earlier, just Cleveland in general, I think Njoku's an interesting play here. 14, 7, and 7 targets in his last 3 games. I like the wide receivers just a little bit better for Cleveland, but Njoku would be a nice pivot off of both of those guys if you wanted to get a little different. I think TJ Hawkinson's an interesting play here. Saw 9 targets last week. I watched that full game for the Vikings. He just looked like the safety valve for Sam Darnold anytime he got in trouble. So $4,700, I think he's an interesting play. Scrolling down a little bit off of that there, Sam Laporta, I know he's questionable, but I believe he's going to play on Sunday. At least Dan Campbell came out and believes that he has a chance to play. $4,300. I believe this is the cheapest we've got him in probably a full year. His price only increased as a rookie last year. Now it's only decreasing in his sophomore season. But at $4,300 in a tournament option, he is definitely someone who can meet 4 or 5x value at that price. And then getting into some of the value here, I think Hunter Henry's interesting again. I know he burned a lot of people last week, especially in cash games, but look at this volume. 5, 9, 6, 8 targets prior to that. Really hard to ignore that for a guy priced here in the 3K range. Jonnu Smith, I like him at $3,800. Probably more of a tournament play, but again, if we look at the volume here, 4+ targets in all of his last 5 games. Maybe even cash game viable considering the matchup. And then assuming that Noah Fant is out here for Seattle this week, you can see he's questionable. I believe the value play of the week is going to be Barner. You can see there 2 and 7 targets in his last 2 games. Okay, the 2-1, probably ignore that. But 7 last week at $3,100. That's probably the value or punt play option. Again, assuming that Fant is out. And then wrapping up the positional plays here with the defenses. If you can afford the Lions here this week, I think they're in a great spot at home against Jacksonville, especially if Mac Jones starts again. Probably not going to be able to get there in my cash lineup, but do like them for tournaments. Let's get down here into the 2K range. I like the Broncos here at home against Atlanta. $2,900 is probably too cheap considering how well they've played this year. I think the Jets are fine at home against Indianapolis at $2,800. And then if we really need to save some money and kind of pump the position, I think it's the Tennessee Titans at home against Minnesota. All right, everyone. Now, my favorite portion of this video, putting together a first look cash lineup and tournament lineup. We'll start on the cash side of things, but just want to remind you all, I am still running that free Discord channel. We have over 840 people in there. I think we've added 50 people in just the last 2 weeks, talking multiple different sports for DFS in there, primarily NFL and NHL, but people are talking some of their favorite sports bets too. So if you want to join that, there's a link to do so in the description below, as well as in the pinned comment below. With that being said, let's put together this first look cash lineup here, starting at the quarterback position. I'm going to go with the top value play, in my opinion, this week to kick things off, and that's going to be Brock Purdy. Now, what you're going to see me do here next is stack him up with Christian McCaffrey. Basically, I'm hoping that the 49ers score 4 touchdowns in this game, and Purdy and or CMC are involved on every single one of those. I'm also going to spend up for Devon Achane here, and then go a 3 running back route, and put in Kareem Hunt too at $6,700. Now, that's very expensive, so we need to find some value at the wide receiver position. Let's scroll down here right away. I'm going to put in Cortland Sutton here, and then I'm going to go to Tillman and see if we can make this work. So he's $5,300, $3,300 left over. Let's just assume that Michael Pittman is not going to play for the Colts this week. So we can find a little value here with Mitchell. Again, tough matchup, but I do like the price there at $4,400. We need to save money at the defense position, so let's just lock in the Titans. That gives us $3,300 for a tight end. And I don't believe that Fant is trending well here this week, so I'm going to put in Barner there as the value play at tight end. And now we're going to put together a first look tournament lineup. Mentioned previously when going through the quarterbacks that we'd build something around Jameis Winston, so I'm a man of my word, and we are going to stick to that. So let's scroll down to Jameis here at $5,500. Let's stack him up with his top 2 wide receivers. Very affordable to do that with both Judy and Tillman. Now we're going to run it back in this game as well with Alvin Kamara. We'll spend up at the running back position. And initially I was going to say we could pay down for Raheem Mostert at $5,800, but he had 0 rushing attempts last week. So I'm actually going to go back to Devon Achane here. Love that matchup at home against the Raiders. $4,600 left over per player. Let's add in Courtland Sutton again here at $5,900. He's just been truly terrific in his last 3 games. We'll spend a little down here at the tight end position, save some money with Hunter Henry. And then at defense, let's go with the Broncos at $2,900. That's $5,700 left over for a flex. And that was DeAndre Hopkins. He's in this range. I can't say I love the mid 5K range, but D-Hop was the guy that I highlighted earlier, so let's jam him in. There's probably a few pivots that we could make in this lineup, but for a first look tournament lineup, I honestly don't mind it. Alright everyone, that is going to wrap up this video here for today. As always, thank y'all for taking the time out of your day to watch the content here on this channel. If you could like this video and subscribe to the channel, I would greatly appreciate that.